Hello everyone from Tokyo. I'm Hitoshi Utsunomiya, Director of Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association. We thank you very much for joining the program today. And I also would like to thank Japan House London for this wonderful opportunity. Let me introduce our organization, the JSS, briefly. JSS was founded in 1953. In Japan, there are about 1,500 sake breweries and 300 shochu distilleries, and nearly all of them are members of our association. So on behalf of our members producers, our aim is to introduce the joy of sake and shochu to people all over the world. I know the pandemic is still strongly interfering our lives, but we hope that your discoveries of sake and shochu from this webinar could contribute to some enjoyment in your everyday life. Please enjoy the program. Thank you.
We thank Mr. Utsunomiya for kindly making this address. Thank you very much indeed for working with Japan House London on these events. We are very excited about today and the two coming up in the future. I would like to next welcome Yoshitake Rie, who is the UK liaison of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association, the JSS. And she will give us an introduction to the fundamentals of sake. So Yoshitake Rie is the UK liaison of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association and the UK representative of the Sake Samurai Association, an organization formed by young sake brewers in Japan to promote sake in overseas markets. In her role, she has been instrumental in organizing the world's largest sake competition at the International Wine Challenge, and Rie is currently spearheads a series of sake campaigns at Japanese embassies, major universities, and international corporations across Europe and the UK. Good morning, Yoshitake-san, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Long time no see.
Indeed, it has been a while. You're in London, yes?
Yes, I am.
As I am, and we are in lockdown at the moment. Is everything okay? Everything is fine?
Yes, very well.
Wonderful, thank you so much indeed. I understand you'll be giving us an introduction to sake.
Yes, thank you very much, yes.
Wonderful. If I can hand over to you,
Okay.
I will stay on. So if you need to...
yeah, stay with me. And just before I change to my slide, and hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. And especially for those who know nothing or very little about sake, it will be my great pleasure to introduce the foundation and the fundamental thing about sake. As you know, in the Western world, sadly, the sake is widely misunderstood. But sake is such a wonderful, really wonderful drink, especially so unique and versatile. So today, my aim is to show you how to become a friend with the sake. So I have about 10 minutes to start to share the screen. See you later, Simon-san. Stay with me.
Okay, I'll stay with you. Thank you. And I'm
Okay.
going to not. Okay.
Right. So, introduction of sake. So let's start. What is sake? So, as you know, the sake is Japan's national drink, which we have a history of over 2,000 years. And as Utsunomiya-san said, we have about 1,400 sake breweries and actually produced 20,000 different brands. In Japan, we call it sake as Nihonshu, means Japanese sake. And we obtained the geographical indication GI in 2015. So, but the sake is not only for Japanese people now. We are exporting widely all over the world. So here we are today. And I just wanted to mention, many people still think sake is like a spirit, very, alcoholic horror. But sake is just like a wine and a beer, and the alcohol average is only 15 or 16, slightly higher than wine, okay? So Japan, obviously the Japanese sake has deeply rooted into the Japanese people's culture. If I quickly go through, for example, New Year, even the youngest child have a little sip from the, shared by the god. And after that, if you are lucky, you get married. And, at the wedding, you exchange 3 times of the sake cups to make the husband and a wife. And you might have seen so many celebrations, we break open the barrel. So this is another thing we always celebrate by opening the barrel and bring the luck. And of course, you heard about Kampai. We shouted in the end, all together. This is kind of a symbol of friendship and the solidarity of the society. So let's go through what sake is made from. Everybody knows sake is rice wine. So it means rice and with water. Japan is blessed with the rice and water, full of lots of soft water. But just putting together doesn't make sake. We need some help of the microorganism. That is the very important part of the sake making. And we use something called koji. It's a magical mold. And when you look at the sake making process, just a below chart, rice needs to be changed first into the sugar. That's called saccharification, but that is by the aid of koji. And after changing to the sugar, we ferment it just like a wine and use the yeast, then become sake. Something very unique about this one, sake making is, it is called multiple parallel fermentation. All those actions happening in the same tank, as you can see on the right side. So this is the only unique sake, the phase, okay? So looking at the sake making and comparing the wine, if the wine is made by the nature and by the god, sake is the art created by the hand of the man. So it is actually true craftsmanship. But anyway, you're going to visit the sake maker later and see it in your eyes, okay? Here, I have to mention a little bit complicated soundedly. It's called rice polishing ratio, because you may see this figure on the label and be frightened, oh my goodness, like a 50% is alcohol. No, this is not alcohol. This is the percentage of how rice is being milled, polished, because it's so important to make a grade of the sake and the style category of sake. So you can look at the grain itself. Outer part is actually unwanted for the sake making, and we need to reach the starch inside. So we need to polish down the sake grain. And this is after that, category will be decided. The more you polish, normally the finer sake becomes, and we call it premium sake, tokutei meisho shu in Japanese. And likewise, ginjo, daiginjo, honjozo, the names are decided. But this one, again, you will see it later at the sake maker. Sake, as I said, such a versatile drink. So we have so many styles of sake in the market. It's not only one taste. I really want you to taste many of those. First of all, sparkling sake, just like a champagne. This is becoming really popular. And also nigori sake on the right, cloudy sake. With a sake leaves inside. It's very robust and punchy, nice sake. And on the left bottom, we call it koshu, aged sake. This is kind of a bit contradiction, I must say, because sake, different from wine, it's good to drink early, not to wait too long. But there are some sake which can last. So these are made at the breweries, and 1 year, 2 years, and the darker it becomes with the age. So the right bottom one is 20 years old sake, called aged sake. Then after that, we have a dessert sake, like a plum sake or yuzu sake. I'm sure you have heard of it. And how to enjoy sake? For example, at home, we are during the lockdown. It is the perfect time for us to enjoy sake, okay? Sake is actually anytime drink. Many people ask, when shall we drink sake? Anytime, just like a wine, when you feel like during the day, on its own, also with the meals as well, and at restaurants and at home. Well, this is the greatest subject to talk about sake temperature, because sake is the uniquest drink which can be enjoyed at a different temperature. Many people still drink, especially older generation, think sake needs to be drunk warm or hot. Well, yes and no, because sake can be drunk at a different temperature. For example, chilled sake, very cold sake, sometimes you can put the ice on the rock, or room temperature, and warm or winter, in the autumn. And like this winter, we could have hot sake. When you make it sake at home, you just boil the hot water and put the sake into the carafe or something like that, and you just bathe it. So it's like a sake bath. In 5 minutes, you will have a very nice warm sake. So how to drink sake at home, you would ask. There are so many beautiful vessels if you want to find. As you know, masu, udon one, it's very difficult to drink though. And all those glass, of course, these small things are very traditional Japanese way to drink, especially when you want to share with other people. But at home, it is perfectly all right to use the wine glass. And in fact, real wine glass has been already in the market, but just use any kind of wine glass, okay? So my favorite subject, sake beyond sushi. The reason why I'm saying is, again, many people still think sake is only good with Japanese food or good with sushi. But sake has incredible power almost to go with any kinds of food, more than wines, because wine has a lot of acidity and also tannin, which can be a very, difficult element with the food. So that's why sommelier needs to work very hard. But sake has a lot of amino acid to forgive the food matching. So sake doesn't fight with food. Let's just quickly see how it works. Obviously, oysters and the seafood and a bit salty stuff is very good. So, seafood is a match the match made in heaven. Everybody knows. Then, wow, meat. How could we drink sake with meat? And it is quite amazing. But for example, like we tested with Master of Wines, our fish and the chips is perfect with something like a sparkling sake. And also full-bodied sake, like an aged sake or junmai, is really good with roast beef and refreshing honjozo with our favorite Indian food. So, it can be very versatile. And the cheese is another thing. Cheese has a lot of lactic acid as well as sake, which really matches well. Of course, soft cheese, strong cheese, you can play with sake, but they are becoming an interesting subject, and even somebody is teaching about it. And of course, sweet, as we said, like plum sake or yuzu sake, or even nice daiginjo can go with the chocolate or sweet. So I might suggest that you could have a wonderful Valentine Day with chocolate and sake. Sake is not for just drinking. To me, at home, sake is the best company for me to do cooking, because it gives a lot of umami and also remove the fishiness and even soften the ingredients. For example, my favorite is bongole, to splash the sake when you put the bongole, and karaage, I marinate with the sake. And of course, when you buy sake, there are many ways to enjoy, and you can mix with the other alcohol, making something like a saketini. But on the right, this is my picture I took the other day. It's called Tamagozake. This is a very Japanese traditional hot eggnog to make yourself very warm and feel really, especially when you feel cold or, coughing, Tamagozake works very well. You can Google it and see how it will make, okay? And very end, if I can talk about it, it takes hours, but it's, sake is again, has been regarded the best medicine because it has a lot of good enzyme and amino acid, as I said before. It helps to your organ function better, like a liver and a heart. So people drink moderately, let's say 1 or 2 cups a day, can even live longer. And of course, it's really good for moisturizing and hydrate your skin. So, some people use sake directly on the face. So here is all about it. And I just wanted to say thank you very much, and keep safe, keep warm, keep enjoying sake. Okay, and thank you so much for inviting me, Simon.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much indeed, Yoshitake-san. For a novice like me of sake, lots of interesting information. I always get confused about ginjo, daiginjo, junmai, and the polishing ratios. And I can see that a lot of questions are coming in for
already.
You've stimulated a lot of interest already, so thank you very much. What we will do, everybody, is we will address those questions at the end of the session.
All right. So,
thank you very much indeed, Yoshitake-san.
See you later.
We will see you later. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So next, I would like to introduce Chris Hughes, who is joining us from Tokyo in Japan, from, in fact, Nippori in Tokyo. Wonderful, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So Chris, for everybody, Chris is a certified sake educator for the Wine and Spirit Education Trust in London. He is currently teaching the level 3 certification in sake at Kaplan in Tokyo. And since moving to Japan in 2014, he has visited over 100 breweries, and he is a co-host of the Sake on Air podcast. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Interested that you were in Midbody as well, as once upon a time I knew that area rather well. I'm sure it's changed a little bit since I was there.
Lots of nice sake shops, very old sake shops.
Wonderful. What's the weather like at the moment? Is it cold in Tokyo?
Very cold today. Yeah, almost 1 degree.
Oh, okay. So colder than London, in fact.
Okay, but it's been up and down, to be honest with you.
Today you're going to talk to us about kura, about breweries. Yes. Sake is made, and then you will connect with the sake brewery, Shirataki Sake Brewery in Niigata, in Japan. Thank you very much. Maybe I can hand over to you. and you'll guide us through. Thank you so much. And I will join up with you later. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Yeah. So as Simon explained, I have visited, well, it's not that many breweries there, considering there are so many in Japan, but I do like visiting sake breweries. It is one of the things that hooked me into sake. And I think actually, there is a lot more to know about a sake brewery. Many people really don't know what a sake brewery is. I mean, what do you imagine when you think about a sake brewery? Do you imagine a factory or something different? So the Japanese word for sake brewery is sakagura, or kura for short. And a kura is Japanese. It basically means warehouse or storehouse originally. And I think it would be fair to say that's how many sake breweries kind of evolved. So traditionally, kura were built from stone, mud, or timber, or as is most common with sake breweries, a construction called dozo, which is a white building with earthen walls. This construction is both fireproof and maintains the temperature inside perfectly, which of course is perfect for storing things like rice, but it's also perfect for producing things like soy sauce, miso, and of course sake. In the olden days, the original kura were actually symbols for shogun, symbols of wealth. And this can be seen in an old Japanese idiom, kura o tateru, which literally means to achieve wealth. In the olden days, rice was a currency. It was used to pay taxes. And many breweries actually started off being asked by the local governor to use surplus rice to make sake, to pay taxes to the daimyo or the clan leaders. Traditionally, sake breweries are these white-walled dozo buildings, but in recent years, the inside of a brewery can offer a variety of different architecture and building styles. For example, I once visited a brewery which has an old ship's mast from when the brewery's ancestors helped rescue sailors from a shipwreck just off the coast from their town. In traditional kura, though, my eyes are always drawn to the roof. Sadly, I don't have any photographs to show you. I'm sorry about that, but it is quite fascinating. They make the roof using a construction style called kikumi, which doesn't use any screws or nails. Instead, the wooden beams are slotted together, a bit like, has anyone played Jenga? It's a bit like a game of Jenga. The roofs are also interesting to look at from the outside. Ceramic tiles called kawara help fireproof the building and disperse rainwater away from the walls. More expensive kura have this crisscross patterned wall called a namako kabe, or it means sea cucumber wall. It reminds people of the sea creature, the sea cucumber, which is a local delicacy here in Japan, but personally, I don't recommend it. Again, that's designed to keep water away from the building. Inside the actual traditional sakagura, you will find a lot of wooden equipment and tools. And the aroma of the traditional kura is really amazing. I love the rustic aroma, which reminds you a bit of Japanese shrines, if you've ever visited one of those. It's a bit like incense, almost. Due to its construction, the inside of the kura is very dark. I read that in the old days, people used to shut up children inside the kura as a form of punishment. But actually, if you can steal the courage to do so, walking around a brewery at night is quite a special spiritual experience. You can really appreciate how brewers must feel being shut away in these buildings for a long time. It's actually not that bad. Rie talked about the water as being an essential ingredient in sake brewing. There is a saying that where you find good quality, next slide, thank you. There is a saying that where you find good quality clear water, sorry, no, go back one slide. You were on the right place before. We're talking about water. Thank you. There is a saying that where you find good quality clear water, you will find sake breweries. Indeed, many breweries choose their location because of the access to good quality water. Many breweries actually have wells inside the brewery grounds, which they use to pump up the water from underground tributaries that carry the water from nearby mountains. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. The chimney is also something that I really like. It's a symbol of many traditional sake breweries, harking back to the old days when breweries used coal-powered burners or boilers. These days, while the chimneys are no longer used because they often get damaged in earthquakes and a bit hard to maintain, if you do find a brewery that has a chimney, definitely snap a photograph. I think it's quite cool. Next slide, please. Traditional breweries are full of history and culture. The problem with these old brewery buildings is they are not really suitable for brewing large volumes of sake, and you cannot brew all year round, and it restricts the installation of machinery, and of course they are hard to maintain. And although they are extremely fireproof, they're not impervious, so throughout history some breweries have been destroyed by fire or earthquakes. Therefore, not every brewery has these traditional kura buildings. Some have built more modern structures to make more sake. But many breweries still have their old buildings, even if they're not being used for brewing. Perhaps they've been repurposed into a restaurant, museum, or shop. I like to refer to the sakagura as a temple or shrine of sake brewing. Whether the building is modern or traditional, the inner sanctum, if you like, of this temple is the koji muro. Next slide, please. The special room where the koji mold is grown onto steamed rice. The old ones resemble something like a Swedish sauna house. It is a sacred place where only brewers can enter during the brewing season. Next slide, please. This is to keep bacteria and other microbes out of the room. This is the koji muro in the photograph. The bacteria used to make natto, the smelly fermented soybeans, which again, you might like or you might hate, it's a bit like Marmite, is stronger than the koji mold. And so brewers are not allowed to eat natto during the entire brewing season. In addition to the koji muro, there are a number of special rooms. The motoba is where the fermentation starter is made. The shikomiba is where the sake is fermented. There is also sometimes a special room for pressing the sake called josoba. And many breweries also have this room called a kaishoba, where the team gathers in the morning and night to discuss the day's brewing. Next slide, please. This is a kamidana. It means God shrine. Many breweries are protected by gods. There are two gods for sake brewing. The main one is called Matsuo, and it's a female god. And so many brewers pray in front of this shrine before they start brewing to pray for a successful brewing season. Next slide, please. This is a sugidama. It's a ball of cedar leaves, which the breweries hang outside to tell people that the new sake is ready to purchase. And this ball of cedar leaves, the leaves naturally change color throughout the year. And as they turn a brown color, that is reflecting the maturation of the sake inside the bottle. So it's thought that when the ball turns a brown color, the sake is ready to consume. And many breweries have beautiful gardens as well, as shown in this photograph. Some breweries have medicine trees called keyaki, which can be up to 400 years old or older, and they often are regarded as power spots. Some breweries operate in the traditional monastic style, which means that brewers live, sleep, eat, and work together throughout the brewing season, and they don't see their families during this time. There will be special living quarters on site for this purpose. Not all breweries still do this tradition, but many do. Next slide, please. So this is a photograph of the rituals that a lot of breweries do where they pray before starting brewing and they pray after finishing brewing. Next slide, please. There are currently 1,405 sakagura in Japan. Not all of them still brew sake though. 1% of these are large producers that brew in large industrial modern facilities using machines as opposed to making by hand. The rest are very small boutique breweries that that actually use traditional buildings. 50% of all the sake in Japan is made by the large brewers. The remaining 50% is made by the smaller breweries. Right now, premium sake is being made in larger quantities because that is what the demand is for. Most of the large breweries, as you can see on the map, can be found in Kyoto and Hyogo. Hence, that is why these prefectures are the top two for production volume, which we can see on the next slide, please. Many prefectures have lots of breweries because their topography is perfect for brewing sake. For example, maybe they have a port for easy distribution or a railway like Hiroshima, which isn't on these slides, but that's also a very big sake producing area. But one of the big sake producing areas, of course, is Niigata. And today's brewery is based in Niigata. So let me talk a little bit about Niigata. Niigata has the most breweries in Japan. It is also the third for production volume. In the 1980s, it created a boom for clear, dry styles of sake called Tande Karakuchi, using the indigenous variety of sake-specific rice developed in the area called Gohyaku Mangoku. Well, that's enough from me about Kura. It's time to meet today's brewery. Simon, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. We have a video, first of all, showing us the work of the Shirataki Brewery in Niigata. We will leave you to watch this. It's really quite short. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Very interesting. And as you mentioned, we are now able to go over to Niigata, to the Shirataki Brewery in Yuzawa in Niigata. We have two special guests joining us. Thank you very much. Hello, yes. So Yuzawa, of course, in Niigata, I mean, for me, I can imagine what it's like right there now, as the train which goes to Tsubame Sanjo in Niigata Prefecture. Tsubame Sanjo, we've worked with metal workers there quite a lot at Japan House London. And as you come out of the mountain at Yuzawa, suddenly you're in this wonderful snowscape, this landscape connected to Kawabata Yasunari's The Snow Country, of course. So I can imagine it's pretty cold and quite snowy there at the moment. Joining us from the Shirataki Brewery are the president, Mr. Takahashi, and the master brewer, Mr. Matsumoto. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Takahashi, maybe you could introduce yourself.
じゃあ、高橋さんの方から自己紹介お願いいたします。
はい、皆さんこんにちは。新潟県にあります白滝酒造社長の高橋と申します。私たちの酒蔵は約160年続いている酒蔵でして、家族経営で私の代で今7代目になります。今日はよろしくお願いします。
Hello everyone. I am the president of the Shirataki Sake Brewery in Niigata. My name is Takahashi. The brewery dates back 160 years. It's a family business and I am the 7th generation.
Thank you very much. And maybe Mr. Matsumoto, you could introduce yourself. Thank you.
松本さんお願いします。
杜氏を務めております松本と申します。私はここ白滝酒造で、普段、17人のスタッフと一緒に酒造りを行っております。本日はよろしくお願いいたします。
I'm the master brewer of Shirataki Sake Brewery. My name is Matsumoto, and I normally have a staff of 17 working with me here brewing the sake.
Thank you very much. Chris, if I may hand over to you, thank you for your wonderful introduction to sake breweries. And now you're going to conduct a session with our two special guests from the Shirataki Sake Brewery in Niigata. over to you. Thank you very much, and I'll rejoin you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. So I'm going to ask some questions. Well, it's kind of like an interview with the brewery. There might be a slight delay between the translations of the Japanese and English, but bear with us. So we've just heard about the brewery. We've had a little introduction of the brewery. I'd like to learn more about the location where they are. What is the connection with the brewery and the location?
この、蔵のあるロケーション、場所について少し、お話しいただければと思います。どこにあって、どうしてそこにあるんでしょうか。
はい。私どもの蔵のある場所は、新潟県の湯沢町というところです。この町は、新潟県と群馬県の県境にある町で、冬には大変たくさんの雪が降る豪雪地帯で有名な町です。
Our brewery is in the town of Yuzawa. It is on the border between Niigata Prefecture and Gunma Prefecture, and it's known for having a lot of snow in the winter.
で冬になると約4メートルぐらいの雪が積もる場所でして、春になるとそのたくさん積もった雪が溶けて、地下に、きれいな地下水がたまります。で、その地下水を汲み上げて、酒造りをしています。
We get about 4 meters of snow in the winter, which then in the spring melts, and you get this lovely, clear groundwater, which we draw up to make our sake.
So the connection is the water, and that's the connection. But what was the reason for starting to brew? Was it just the water, or was there another reason?
じゃあ水が大事ということなんですけれども、ここで鮭を作り始めたのは水だけが理由なんでしょうか。他に何か理由ありましたか。
はい。で、先ほど言った通り、もちろんきれいな水が豊富にあるので、酒造りに適している土地だということが一つと、あともう一つは昔、ここ新潟県から東京に行く、旅人が通るここ昔の街道沿いに、蔵がありました。新潟から東京に、出ていくときに、ここから高い山、峠を越えていかなくてはいけないんですけれども、その峠の手前で、休む宿場町として栄えていました。で、そこの、旅人たちに、お酒を振る舞っていたというのが始まりだというふうに聞いています。
Of course, one reason is that we have all this abundant, beautiful water, but the other reason is that our town flourished as a post town on the road from Niigata to Tokyo. This was where travelers would pass through on the way to Tokyo, and this was where they would stop to rest before going over the mountains. And so my understanding is that they started brewing sake here to give to the travelers.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of breweries, I know, started in these kind of postal towns and kind of served as a, which serve as a pit stop for travelers, and they sort of serve their sake to the travelers, and that's how they started brewing. That makes a lot of sense. What about the rice? Do you grow your own rice, or how do you source the rice? Because that area, I think, is very famous for growing rice. Am I correct?
で、お米の方はどうでしょうか。確かにお米が多く作られている地域ではあると思うんですけれども、ご自分で作ってらっしゃいますか。
会社として独自でお米の栽培はしておりませんけれども、一部の品種では契約農家さんにお米を実際作っていただいておりまして、その中でも刈り取り、田植えから刈り取りまで、ポイントで実際に圃場に足を運ばせていただくケースもございます。
We don't grow the rice ourselves as a company, but we do have some of the rice that we use grown for us, and that enables us to keep an eye on it right from the planting through to the harvesting, to monitor the rice.
Okay, fantastic. Let's just stop there for a sec. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to go to one of the rooms in the brewery. It's called the Shikomi Bar. I did briefly mention it in my little introduction to Kura. This is situated on top of the fermentation tank. So maybe we can have a look in a tank and see what's going on with their sake at the moment. So can we go over to camera number 2? Okay, there we are. So you can see it's a very clean room. Look at that, sparkling floors. It's quite a modern looking room as well, I think. They use a lot of machines, Shirataki Sake Brewery. Let's have a look inside the tank. ちょっとタンクの中を覗いてみましょうか。Ooh, lovely, lovely. There it is, bubbling happily away. What stage is this tank at in the fermentation process?
このタンクはどの段階にあるんでしょうか？
このタンクは、もろみを仕込んでから4日目のものになります。
This moromi is 4 days on the 4th day of shikomi.
Oh, okay. So I noticed that your brewery is quite modern looking, not kind of, like the traditional sake breweries, which I talked a little bit about. So I assume that you upgraded the brewery. When did this happen, and what was the reason for upgrading the brewery?
そちらの蔵がとてもモダンなようなんですけれども、私が先ほど話してた伝統的なものではなさそうですけれども、これをどっかの時点でアップグレード、新しくされたかと思うんですけれども、それはいつアップグレードして、その理由は何だったんでしょうか？
そうですね。今の新しい蔵に変わったのが、今から約30年前になります。30年前に新しい蔵になって、どちらかというと近代的な蔵に生まれ変わりました。
Our new modern brewery was built around 30 years ago. That's when we started. That's when we upgraded.
で、ちょうどその時、私たちの、主力商品でありますジョーゼ水のごとしという商品が東京、関東で、大変売れるようになりまして、で、どちらかというと全国的なスーパーですとかコンビニエンスストアでの販売が増えていったんですけども、やっぱりそういう売り場になってくると、どうしても品質管理というか衛生管理が必要になってきます。それを実現するために、近代化、機械化したというのが一つです。で、もう一つは、やっぱり、蔵人たちの労働環境、を改善するというか、酒造りというのはすごくなんていうんですかね、過酷な仕事で、夜も寝ないで、酒造りをするような昔は環境だったんですけれども、そういう労働環境を少しでも改善したいといったところもあって、今の形になりました。
Around that time, one of our main sake brands, Jozen Mizunogotoshi, was becoming really popular in the Kanto region in Tokyo, and it was being sold. It started to take off in supermarkets, in convenience stores in the rest of Japan. And when you're doing business on that scale, then hygiene and quality become very important. And so that was one reason why we decided to modernize and to automate our brewing. But the other reason was that we wanted to improve the working environment for our staff, because brewing sake is actually very hard work. And it used to be that staff would have to stay up all night working. And so we wanted to make that environment better for the people who work here.
So talking about that monastic culture again. So they've basically done away with that monastic culture or tried to improve it for modern kind of living, which I see in a lot of breweries. Mizunogotoshi is a brand that you can easily get in Tokyo. I could walk outside to a convenience store here in Tokyo and probably find a bottle of their sake quite easily. I noticed that Jozen Mizunogotoshi, the design, is almost quite feminine in appearance. Is it possible that perhaps you were trying to target female drinkers as well? Because female drinkers don't really drink sake here in Japan, traditionally.
そうですね。今、水のごとしの話が出たんですけれども、これは東京でもすぐ手に入りますね。これ、私のイメージですけれども、女性らしい、瓶になってるんですけれども、これはもう女性をターゲットに作っていらっしゃるのでしょうか。もう伝統的に言うと、日本の女性、あんまり日本酒を飲まないイメージなんですけれども、そういう戦略はあったんですか？
そうですね。上手水落としというブランドは、今から30年前に発売したブランドです。で、その発売当時も、やっぱりターゲットとしては、若い女性の方に飲んでいただきたいということで、スタートしたブランドです。で、30年経った今でも、やっぱり若い女性、あとはその日本酒は飲み慣れてないんだけれども、飲み始める、入門のブランドという位置づけで、私どもを捉えています。なので、デザインもすごくモダンで、若い人たちが手に取りやすいようなデザインにすることを心がけています。
You're right. The Jozen Mizunogotoshi brand, when it launched 30 years ago, was targeted towards young women. And even now, 30 years later, it's something that we market towards young women and also newcomers to sake who aren't used to sake but who maybe want to try it. And so the design is very modern and it's a design that appeals to young people.
The area where you're based is very famous for skiing, and I think it's very popular with tourists. I know Simon talked about that. And I was wondering how much of your sake you actually sell locally and how you've been affected by the virus, which we won't name. How does the local sales compare now with, say, maybe 50 years ago?
湯沢はもうスキーでとても有名で観光客が多いと思うんですけれども、そちらで作っていらっしゃる日本酒はどれくらい地元で飲まれてるんですか？そして、このウイルスの影響もお聞きしたいんですけれども、50年前と比べて、ローカルで飲まれてるのとよそで飲まれてる比率は変わってますか？
そうですね。昔はどちらかというともう新潟県内での販売がほとんどだったんですけども、今は私たちの販売の割合は、この上手水のことしというブランドが東京で販売したこともあるんですけども、新潟県内が約 10% で、新潟県外が 90% です。うち当社の全体の出荷量の約半分が東京を中心とした首都圏での販売になっています。私たちの蔵は新潟県の中で一番東京に近い場所にありますので、どちらかというと、主な販売先が東京になっています。
Well, it used to be that our sake was mostly sold in Niigata, but with the launch of Jozen Mizunogotoshi being sold in Tokyo, now 10%, I would say, is sold in Niigata, and the remaining 90% is elsewhere. And of the total sales, about 50% is in Tokyo. We are the closest kura to Tokyo in Niigata, so it's an obvious place for us to be selling.
Wow. Simon, are we okay to continue? Or
I think we're running out of a little bit of time, actually.
Okay.
I was wondering. We have several questions coming through, so I wonder some of them are we can direct definitely to Shirataki. Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully that might even cover some of the stuff that I was going to ask as well. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. Thank you so much, Mr. Takahashi, Mr. Matsumoto. Thank you so much for that. I apologize for stepping in here, but we do have lots of questions, and I would like to invite Yoshitake-san to come back as well, if you would. Yoshitake-san, thank you so much. Hello again. I would like to start the questioning, if we may. We do have some for Mr. Takahashi and Mr. Matsumoto. The first one is, what is the brewing season? And this is from Philip.
はですね、9月から仕込みを開始しまして、仕込みが終わるのが例年ですと大体4月末で、お酒を全部絞り終わるのが5月末っていうようなそんな具合です。
We start the shikomi usually in November. Then that will be finished around the end of April. And then the sake will be pressed by the end of May.
Wonderful, thank you. As I said, we do have lots of questions. Wonderfully, the JSS members have been answering some of the questions that have been coming through as we've been going along as well. So thank you so much for that. I have another question for Mr. Takahashi and Mr. Matsumoto. This is from Nikki. It's been mentioned that a lot of wooden utensils and equipment are involved in the making of sake. Is this reason similar to the reason in cheese making, whereby wooden utensils carry the unique mold, and in the case of sake, the mold for the koji, and that this can transfer between batch to batch? Cheese comes up a lot, doesn't it, today?
That's a good question.
やはり昔ながらの道具を使用しなければ再現できない風味とかっていうのはあるのかなとは思ってます。ただここ白滝酒造についてはやはり先ほどもありましたように、衛生管理とかあるいはその機械設備っていうものを多く取り入れておりますので、そういった意味ではまずきれいに道具を洗浄してゼロの状態から丁寧な清潔なものをお酒作りを心がけるというようなコンセプトでやっております。
I suppose there is a sense in which if you don't use the traditional tools,
the dozo. If you don't use the dozo kura.
Yes, and the dozo kura, then it's harder to replicate the replicate some of the effect. But in our case, as we've said, we've modernized, we've automated, we prioritize hygiene, and so we clean everything thoroughly before we start the process so that everything is clean and hygienic, and that's what we use to make our sake.
Yeah, I think it could be seen as a negative thing or a positive thing. It depends on the brewery, and it's sort of not every brewery sees that like natural bacteria, microbes as a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, if I may, also to Shirataki Brewery. Is there a special rice that is used, or can any type of rice suffice in the production?
ですね、白滝酒造では新潟県が独自に酒米を育ててますコシタンレイというお米ですけれども、そちらのお米を使った商品がいくつかございます。
For our brewery, for Shirataki Sake Brewery, we do use a particular type of rice that is grown here in Niigata, and that's what we use for our sake. It's called koshitanne.
Yeah. It's, I mentioned Gohyaku Mangoku in my introduction. So one of the parents of Koshitanre is Gohyaku Mangoku, and the other parent is Yamada Nishiki. Perhaps you've heard of Yamada Nishiki.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We have a question now. Maybe I can ask Yoshitake-san this question. This has come from Alan, and he's talking about something which I have actually right in front of me, quite by coincidence. He said, can you tell us something about the use of the masu, the small box? I mean, of course, we used a picture of a masu and with a glass inside it for this particular event. He mentions that when he was in Japan, some bars would provide a glass inside a masu and then fill the glass until it overflowed into the masu. Maybe you could tell us something about this. Is it a tradition?
Okay, thank you. I know how popular and everybody wants to drink out of masu. And the masu actually, rather than just a sake cup, it was made for the measurement of the rice or anything, and it contains 1 go. It means 180 milliliter. So that was used when we scoop the rice or water or everything. So it was a measurement unit. But as well, when we drink sake, this was particularly used because often it's made by the Japanese cedar, which gives a very punchy, woody nose, and it reflects So that's why like a taruzake, and it's not only just a sake, but it's the smell and aroma of the wood makes you really feel really good. And they are often used at the ceremony, like a kagami biraki, rather than everyday use. It is for some special occasions we use it. So did it answer?
I hope so. Thank you very much indeed. It certainly answered it for me. Thank you very much indeed. And I always look forward to that particular method of serving. Maybe, Chris, maybe I can ask you this question. We have a question here from Shannon, and it says, is there much of a trend towards craft sake brewing and homebrewed sake as we have seen in craft beer in recent years?
Sadly, it's illegal here in Japan. It's completely banned. Even mixing like a fermented beverage with fruit or something like that is completely banned here in Japan. So the answer is no, but historically, yes. There was sake actually started being made in the home. It's called doburoku. You can still get a license to make doburoku, but it's very difficult in Japan. That's about it as far as craft brewing is concerned.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have not much time left, but we do have this interesting question here. I noticed, Yoshitake-san, this is one thing that you mentioned about food pairing. We have lots of questions about food pairing, and maybe it's a little difficult to answer all of them, but maybe quickly. You mentioned cheese, for example. Maybe you could, what cheese, which sake, sorry, would you recommend to go with cheese for those of us here in the UK?
Yes, I mean, happily, this is like a cheese academy is working on that as well. But it's a very, one thing about the sake is anything really salty matches with the sake. And sake, cheese has a lot of cheese, but it's a soft cheese or hard cheese, like Parmesan or all those stuff. It can be easy to go with a lighter type of the sake, such as even the sparkling or even light ginjo, daiginjo type. But as it matures, we need something a little bit more stronger. Wow, this is also depending on which one you respect. If you really want to respect the cheese-wise, you will never overwhelmed by the sake. But usually, strong sake, we need a strong cheese, we need a strong sake, like aged sake or full body sake. Junmai would be a perfect one.
Wonderful, thank you very much. We do have maybe one more question before we finish. Whoever would like to answer, I'll throw it open there. Are there any, and this is interesting, are there any Japanese sake breweries elsewhere in the world? I use the word Japanese sake breweries here. Or are they all located exclusively in Japan? And if so, is that the choice to preserve the authenticity, or is it to meet the standards of production? Very briefly, I know Yoshitake-san, you might know about something in the UK, about sake in the UK. We have sake in the UK as well, don't we?
Sake made in UK.
Yes,
yes, we have obviously the first one was a Kampai, craft small brewers run by the Japanese English people. Also, Japanese brewer came here. It's called the Big Dojima Brewery. So major big ones. But in Europe, we have, I don't know, maybe 13 or, big breweries that are established now. So sake is not only now made in Japan, but it's lots of sake made overseas.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That is all we have time for, I'm afraid. It's very quick. I do apologize. There's so many more questions and so much more to know. This is from Maki, Yoshitake-san, Chris-san, Shirataki, Shuzo no Takahashi-san, to Matsumoto-san. It's written in Japanese. Thank you very much for the fantastic presentations and explanations. I've learned a lot about sake, and now I really want to drink sake as soon as this event finishes. I wonder what time zone you're in, is my comment. It's a little early for me here, I'm afraid. But thank you very much. I think that does sum it up. Thank you to JSS, to the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association for partnering with us on this event. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Yoshitake-san. Thank you very much for joining us from London. For Chris Hughes from joining us from Tokyo. Thank you very much indeed. And Mr. Takahashi and Master Brewer Matsumoto for joining us from Yuzawa in Niigata Prefecture. Thank you very much indeed. Is it snowing in Yuzawa at the moment?
はい、今年は雪多いです。毎日のように雪降ってます。
Yep, a lot of snow this year. It snows every day right now.
It's a nice view though. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody who joined us this morning here to watch and to listen to the presentations. Following this event, all attendees will receive a feedback questionnaire by email. Please fill this in with your comments. Thank you, of course, to Beth Ann Jones for doing a splendid job interpreting between all of us. Thank you so much indeed for your help there. It's most appreciated. We do have a couple more events coming up soon. Of course, this is the first in a series about Japanese drinks with the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association. The next one is on the 27th of January. Discover Shochu, a distillery visit and introduction. This is closer to my heart. For, of course, I was in southern Japan when I lived in Japan, and Shochu is very much what I know about more than sake. We also have Japanese drinks at home, sake pairings and Shochu cocktails. This is on the 3rd of February. And we also have, in connection with our exhibition, which we had to close, unfortunately, because of lockdown, but we are still continuing with associated events. It's Architecture for Dogs. Conversations on Architecture with Atelier Bow Wow and MVRDV, who were both makers in the Architecture for Dogs exhibition. That's on the 29th of January in partnership with the London Festival of Architecture. And you can also see the Architecture for Dogs exhibition virtually from our website. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a wonderful event today. I've learned an awful lot. Thank you so much to everybody involved. We look forward to seeing you all again, and stay safe. I know that we've done this under difficult circumstances in London and in Japan. So thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. Special thank you to everybody in Yuzawa. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.